He should have died that night. Julian Reed remembers the cold first. Not the knife, not the blood, but the cold. It crept over his skin like the shadow of death, slow and certain, as he collapsed in a forgotten alley behind the bar. A hand over his mouth. A voice like gravel in his ear. Empty your pockets, or I empty your throat. The blade pierced his side. Pain bloomed like fire. And then silence. No footsteps. No breath. Just the crack of bone and a low, furious snarl. Julian barely managed to open his eyes. What he saw shouldn't have been real. A man, no, something more, stood over the attacker's crumpled body. Moonlight struck the stranger's pale face, illuminating eyes like polished silver and lips slick with blood. "You won't die tonight," the man said, kneeling beside him. His voice was soft now. "Cold as winter." "Not yet." Julian tried to speak, but darkness dragged him under. He woke in silk sheets. The pain in his side was gone. The room was silent, dimly lit by the flicker of a fireplace. Shadows danced along tall windows and ancient stone walls. He sat up slowly, heart pounding. Where the hell am I? Before he could rise, the door creaked open, and there he was, the man from the alley. Tall, elegant, terrifyingly calm. Black hair, black coat, pale skin that made his crimson eyes glow like dying embers. "You're safe," the man said. Julian swallowed. "You saved me." "I had to," he replied. "Your blood was calling to me." Julian flinched. "Excuse me?" The stranger stepped forward, smooth as smoke. "I suppose I should introduce myself properly. Damien Cross, and you were something I didn't expect." Julian shifted uneasily under Damien's stare. "What does that mean, my blood was calling to you?" Damien tilted his head, studying him like a puzzle. "It means you're not ordinary, Julian Reed." "Not to me." Julian narrowed his eyes. "You knew my name before I even said it." "I did," Damien said with a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Names have power, and yours carries more than most." Julian glanced around the opulent bedroom again. Mahogany floors, velvet drapes, gilded candle sconces. Nothing about this place was modern. It felt like he'd stepped into a castle that time forgot. "You didn't bring me to a hospital." "No," Damien replied. "Doctors can't treat wounds made by a blade laced with ashroot and silver. Whoever stabbed you knew what they were doing." Julian's breath caught. "That's not normal. Nothing about this city is normal when you know where to look." Damien's voice was smooth, with a cool sharpness underneath. "There's an underworld beneath all this concrete and neon. You stepped into it. And now, you're mine." The words hung in the air like smoke. Julian blinked. "Yours?" Damien took another step closer. "Not in the way you're thinking. At least, not yet." He stopped just beside the bed. The air between them thinned. Julian could smell something faint and earthy on Damien's clothes. Old books, rain, smoke. Something ancient. Something magnetic. "I didn't choose this," Julian whispered. "No," Damien agreed. "But now you have a choice." He reached into his coat and pulled out a single black envelope, laid it carefully on the nightstand. "Stay here. Let me protect you. In return, I'll ask for very little." Julian looked at it but didn't touch it. "What's very little to someone like you?" Damien's lips curved again, this time more honestly. "A few things. Your trust, your silence, and your blood." Julian's heart skipped. "You're a vampire," he said flatly. "I am," Damien replied, calm as dusk. "And I'm supposed to just agree to let you feed on me?" "You're not a prisoner," Damien said. "You can walk out that door whenever you like." Julian looked at the velvet curtains, the heavy stone, the locked world outside. "Can I?" Damien's gaze darkened slightly. "I won't stop you, but if you leave now, I won't be there the next time someone tries to finish what was started." Julian stared down at the envelope. His fingers itched. "Why me?" he asked softly. Damien's voice dropped to a whisper. "I've lived through 2.5 centuries, Julian. I've fed from kings and killers. But the first time I smelled your blood, I remembered what it felt like to want. Julian couldn't sleep. The bed was too soft, the air too quiet, and somewhere beyond the stone walls of Damien's estate, the city still buzzed. But here, time felt like it had folded in on itself. He sat at the edge of the mattress, staring at the black envelope Damien had left. He hadn't opened it. Not yet. Outside the grand windows, the moon was high and cold, bathing the marble floor in silver. Candles flickered low. And still, he felt watched. Not in fear, in awareness. When he opened the door, he found Damien waiting at the end of the hall. He wasn't surprised. "You're awake," Damien said without turning. "I never fell asleep." Julian stepped closer. "Was that your plan? Let me stew in mystery until I broke?" "If I wanted you broken," Damien said, finally looking at him, "you would be." Julian swallowed. The words weren't a threat, but they hit like one. Damien turned away. "Come, I'll show you the house." The manor was endless. Ceilings high as cathedrals, hallways lined with portraits whose eyes seemed to follow. A library that smelled like dust and ink. And rooms full of secrets Julian couldn't name. At last, Damien led him to a tall wooden door bound in iron. "This is where I spend most of my time," he said, and pushed it open. The study was dark and warm, lit by a fire that never seemed to fade. Shelves rose to the ceiling, overflowing with leather-bound books, scrolls, and artifacts. And in the center, a curved, velvet couch. Damien sat first, legs crossed, hand resting over his chin. "Sit, Julian." He did, not because he was commanded, but because he wanted to. That realization unnerved him more than Damien's eyes. "You still haven't opened the envelope," Damien said softly. "I don't make deals with men I don't know." "You're learning," Damien said, almost amused. "That's good." Julian shifted, folding his arms. "Why me, really?" Damien didn't answer right away. Instead, he rose and walked to the shelves, fingertips gliding across ancient spines. "Do you know what vampires fear the most?" Julian blinked. "Sunlight?" Damien turned, a slow smile forming. "No memory." He approached again, slow and steady. "Immortality is not a gift. It is weight. And every name, every touch, every taste stays inside us. The pain never fades. The pleasure never softens." He was standing in front of Julian now, looking down. "But when I saw you, something inside me moved, like I'd tasted sunlight for the first time in centuries." Julian felt breathless. "You make it sound like I enchanted you." "You did," Damien said simply. Silence stretched between them. Electric, waiting to break. Then Damien leaned down, closer than was proper. His hand brushed against Julian's cheek. "Let me taste you, Julian. Just once. And if you still want to leave after, I won't stop you." His breath was cold. His lips dangerously near. Julian's voice barely came out. "You'll stop?" Damien's fingers lingered along Julian's jaw, his eyes darkening. "Yes." And for reasons he couldn't explain, Julian nodded. Julian's breath hitched as Damien leaned closer. The room was still. The fire crackled softly behind them, but all Julian could hear was his own pulse, racing, loud, like it was begging to be touched. Damien's hand found the side of his neck, fingers cold and elegant. "I won't hurt you," he murmured. Julian didn't move. He didn't want to. He tilted his head, just slightly, just enough. Damien's lips hovered, brushing skin. Then, sharp pain, quick and clean. Julian gasped. It wasn't like he imagined. It wasn't brutal or wild. It was precise, controlled, like being kissed by a blade. His body went rigid for a moment, then relaxed. Warmth spread through his limbs, slow, dizzying. A strange calm followed, laced with something else, pleasure. He felt Damien's breath hitch against his throat. A low, ragged sound escaped from the vampire's chest, half growl, half sigh. Julian's fingers gripped Damien's coat, not to push him away, but to keep him close. When Damien pulled back, his lips were stained red, his eyes glowing softly. For a moment, he looked almost vulnerable, like he'd taken something far more than blood. Julian's voice came out hoarse. "That's not what I expected." Damien wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, composed but quiet. It never is. Julian touched his own neck. Am I supposed to feel that good? Damien gave a dry smile. No, most donors don't. Julian's brows furrowed. So why did I? Damien didn't answer right away. Instead, he sat beside Julian again, head tilted back against the velvet couch, his voice low. Because I didn't just feed. Julian turned to him. What did you do? I let myself feel it, Damien said. That's rare for me. They sat in silence. The kind that isn't empty, but heavy with unsaid things. Finally, Julian asked, Do you always get like that? No. Do I make you lose control? Damien looked at him. Really looked. You make me remember what control costs. Julian stared into the fire, trying to ignore the heat building in his chest. Should I be scared of you? Damien's answer was barely a whisper. Yes, but you're not. That's what scares me. Julian leaned in slightly, impulsively. You want more, don't you? Damien's jaw tensed. Of you? Always. Then, softer. But I won't take unless you give. Julian met his gaze. His lips parted. I'm still here, aren't I? The next morning, the world outside the manor was bright and cold. But inside, the sun never touched the velvet curtains or ancient walls. Julian stood at the tall window, wrapped in one of Damien's robes. Soft, heavy, smelling faintly of sandalwood and something darker. He didn't feel like a prisoner. But he didn't feel free either. Behind him, Damien's voice broke the silence. You didn't run. Julian didn't turn. Was I supposed to? No. I hoped you wouldn't. Damien crossed the room, barefoot and effortless, like he didn't belong in a world governed by gravity. He stopped beside Julian, close enough that their arms brushed. You feel different, Julian said. Damien raised an eyebrow. Different how? Less cold. A faint smile. That's dangerous. They moved to the library, where a pot of black tea steamed beside a thick folder on the low table. Julian opened it. Inside, records, newspaper clippings, even hospital files, all with his name. He looked up sharply. You've been watching me. Yes, Damien said calmly. Not always. But enough. Julian's heart pounded. Why? Because something about you called to me long before we met. I didn't understand it at first. I still don't. Julian flipped through the pages, his hands trembling. You think I'm special? Damien leaned forward, voice low. I know you are. Julian sat back, folding his arms. So what happens now? Damien studied him. Now we make terms. Terms? You stay here, Damien said. Under my protection. You write, if you wish. You live in peace. Julian arched a brow. And what do I give in return? Damien's eyes darkened. Your blood, when I need it. And, if you allow, your company. There was a beat of silence between them. Julian tilted his head. You want to feed on me and talk? Damien's lips quirked. I'm not used to company I actually enjoy. Julian smiled. And you enjoy mine? I crave it, Damien said quietly. Julian stood, walked around the couch slowly. And if I say no? Damien looked up at him, calm but unreadable. Then I let you go. And if I say yes? Damien stood too, just inches away. Then you stay. And I take care of you, feed from you, and, if you ask, more. Julian's breath caught. Damien didn't touch him. He didn't have to. Julian whispered, Is this a deal or a seduction? Damien's voice was like smoke. Sometimes they're the same. Julian signed nothing. There were no written contracts, no magical pacts, no binding rituals. Just his word, and the way Damien looked at him when he gave it, like a vow offered in silence. He stayed. Days passed like shadows through lace. Quiet, lingering. Damien never pushed, never fed without asking, but each request came closer. Bolder. Your wrist tonight, he'd say gently, or just your throat, nothing more. and Julian would nod, a little too quickly. He told himself it was for safety. But the truth was, he liked it. The feeding became ritual. Damien's breath at his skin, his fangs, sharp and careful, the rush of heat, the dizzying calm, the way the world narrowed to nothing but them. Sometimes Damien's hands would linger on Julian's jaw, his collarbone, his hips. Nothing ever crossed the line, but the line grew thinner every night. One evening, after feeding, Julian didn't pull away. Damien's lips still brushed his skin, his breath unsteady. Julian reached up, fingers curling into Damien's coat, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want you to stop." Damien stilled. Then, slowly, he leaned in, mouth hovering just over Julian's lips. "Are you sure?" Julian nodded. Their mouths met. Soft at first, tentative, then urgent. Damien kissed like he'd waited a century for permission. Julian gasped as Damien's hand cupped his jaw, the other at his back. The kiss deepened, teeth catching lips, breath stolen between them. And when Damien pulled back, he looked shaken. "I'm not gentle," he whispered. "I'm not asking you to be," Julian replied. They didn't make love that night, but something passed between them, unspoken, electric. A surrender. A claim. Julian lay awake for hours after, wondering what he'd let in, and why he didn't regret it. Julian's fingers trembled as he reached for Damien's collar. They stood in the middle of the study, firelight dancing on velvet shadows, casting golden lines down Damien's pale throat. Damien's breath was already ragged. "Julian." "Don't ask me again," Julian whispered. "Just take me." That was all it took. Damien surged forward, lips crashing into his with a hunger that had been held back far too long. His kiss was all teeth and need, hands everywhere, gripping Julian's waist, pulling him closer, gripping like he was afraid Julian would vanish. Clothes were pulled away in rough, desperate motions, shirt buttons scattered on the floor. Damien's fingers burned where they touched skin. Julian gasped as Damien's mouth found his neck, not biting, not yet, just kissing, licking, teasing. Fangs scraped gently, taunting. "Please," Julian whispered. "I want to feel it." Damien's voice broke. "You don't know what you're asking." "Then show me." The bite was slower this time. Intimate. Damien's fangs pierced with aching precision, and Julian cried out, not from pain, but from the rush that followed. Blood moved between them like fire. Hot, thick, heady. His body arched into Damien's, every nerve lit. And when Damien lifted his head, blood on his lips, eyes glowing with barely restrained heat, Julian didn't hesitate. He pulled Damien down. Hard. Their bodies collided. Mouths clashed. Damien was stronger, overwhelming, but Julian met him with equal force. They moved in rhythm, skin against skin, breathless moans echoing through the study like a hymn of surrender. No roles. No rules. Only want. Later, wrapped in Damien's arms, Julian's skin still buzzed where Damien had touched him. He whispered into Damien's chest. "That wasn't just feeding." "No," Damien said hoarsely. "It never was." Julian smiled against his skin. "Then what was it?" Damien pressed a kiss to Julian's forehead, voice low. "Everything I never let myself want." Julian woke to the sound of soft breathing. Not his own. Damien lay beside him, half covered by tangled sheets, silver eyes half lidded in the amber glow of the dying fire. For the first time, he looked almost human. Vulnerable. Beautiful. Julian reached up and brushed a lock of dark hair from Damien's face. "Do you sleep?" "Not often," Damien murmured. "Not deeply." "Not until last night." Julian smiled faintly. "Guess I wore you out." Damien opened his eyes fully now. "You did more than that." He sat up, pulling on his shirt with slow, practiced movements. Feeding like that, while being that close, formed something more dangerous than pleasure. Julian's brow furrowed. Dangerous how? Damien's fingers stilled at the buttons of his shirt. "I've bound myself to you," he said. The words settled heavy in the air. Julian sat up, heartbeat rising. "What does that mean?" Damien turned to him, Serious now. It means your blood is inside me, not just your scent or your taste. Your essence. I'll feel you now. Your emotions. Your pain. Your need. Julian swallowed. And what about me? Damien hesitated. Some of it works both ways. Julian looked down at his arm, at the faint bruises where Damien had fed. They looked almost like love bites now. Is that why I can't stop thinking about you? Damien looked at him sharply. Is that true? Julian didn't answer. He didn't need to. Later that day, as Julian walked through the library alone, he noticed something new. A scent in the air. Different from the usual old parchment and dried herbs. Ash. And blood. He followed it to the far end of the hall, where one of the windows was cracked open, too high to reach from the ground. And beneath the sill, a black feather. Still warm. Julian picked it up, heart pounding. He wasn't alone. And neither was Damien. Damien stared at the black feather in Julian's hand, his face unreadable. Julian didn't speak. He waited. When Damien finally did speak, his voice was softer than Julian had ever heard it. They found you. Who? Julian asked. Damien took the feather gently, crushing it between pale fingers. The crows. They're not birds. They're vampires, old ones. Guardians of the old code. They don't tolerate change or threats to power. Julian stepped closer. What does that have to do with me? Damien hesitated. Then, your bloodline is not entirely human. Julian sat down slowly. His head swam. I'm what, part vampire? No, Damien said. Something older. A lineage once thought extinct. Carriers of a dormant gift. Your blood, it wakes power in others. Heightens senses. Strengthens bond. And, if misused, it could enslave someone, Julian whispered. Damien nodded. It's why you were attacked in the alley. Someone knew what you were. Someone wanted to take it. Julian shook his head. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to choose me, Damien said. Not out of fear. Not because you felt bound. Julian looked up. But I am bound now. Damien knelt in front of him, eyes fierce. Then let me say this clearly. If you want to break the bond, I'll let you go. I swear it. Julian stared at him for a long time. Then, I don't want to go. That night, Damien showed Julian something he'd never shown anyone. A hidden room beneath the manor. Carved stone. Candlelight. A shrine of sorts. Symbols etched in old tongues. And in the center, a basin of black glass. Damien pricked his own palm. Let the blood fall into the basin. It shimmered, then revealed memories. Echoes. A woman with Julian's green eyes. A fire. Screams. A name spoken like a curse. Reed. Julian staggered back. That was your ancestor, Damien said quietly. She broke the first blood pact with the vampire court and paid for it with her life. Julian's voice trembled. And now they want me to pay for it too. Damien stood beside him, eyes burning. They'll have to go through me. The manor felt different that night. The candles burned lower. The shadows seemed heavier. Every creak of the stone walls echoed louder than before. Julian sat at the edge of Damien's bed, watching him fasten the last of his black cuffs. Damien looked regal even now. Composed, cold, terrifyingly elegant. You're going to meet them, Julian said. Alone. Damien nodded. They demanded parley. I agreed. 1 hour. Neutral ground. Julian stood. It's a trap. I know. Julian crossed the room, grabbed Damien's arm. Then why go? Damien looked at him, gaze softening. Because if I don't, they'll send someone else. And that someone won't talk. They'll burn everything. Julian's hands tightened. I don't want to lose you. Damien's eyes glinted red in the candlelight. You already have me, Julian, more than anyone ever has. That night, they didn't talk much. They didn't need to. Their hands said everything. Every button undone was a promise. Every breath a prayer. Every kiss a plea not to forget. Damien touched Julian like he was memorizing the shape of his soul. And Julian gave in, utterly, completely. There was no dominance, no restraint, no feeding. Just skin. Lips. Gasps. Just love. Later, in the dark, Julian whispered, "Will you come back?" Damien answered without hesitation. Yes. Julian touched his chest, feeling the cold fire beneath his skin. "Promise me." Damien leaned in, their foreheads touching. "I swear it." Damien stood beneath the ruined cathedral, moonlight cutting through shattered stained glass. The crows emerged from the mist, 4 cloaked figures, eyes black as tar, their movements sharp and ancient. "You've broken the order," one hissed. "You've bonded with the blood-born," another growled. Damien stood tall. "He is under my protection." "Then you will fall with him." Back at the manor, Julian woke with a jolt. His chest burned, hot, aching, like something inside him had been pierced. The bond. Something was wrong. He didn't think. He ran. Julian arrived, just as the first blade struck Damien's side. The vampire staggered, but did not fall. Julian didn't hesitate. He stepped between Damien and the next attack, arms spread wide. "Enough!" His voice rang out, loud and shaking. "If it's me you want, take me. Leave him." The air trembled. The crows paused. Then one turned to the others. "He offers himself willingly. That changes everything." Damien's voice broke behind him. "Julian, don't." But Julian stepped forward. "I'm not like her," he said. "I won't run. I won't hide. Take my blood if it keeps him safe." The eldest crow approached, hand outstretched, and just before he touched Julian's chest, Damien attacked. Blood sprayed. Fangs flashed. It was not elegance. It was fury. A beast awakened. Julian watched, helpless, as Damien tore through the crows like a storm. When it was over, Damien fell to one knee, shaking, bleeding, glowing faintly with red light. Julian ran to him. "Damien!" "I broke the pact," Damien gasped. "They'll send more. I've condemned myself." Julian cupped his face, eyes wet. "Then let me be your sanctuary." They returned to the manor before sunrise. The wounds closed. The fear lingered. But so did something stronger. Julian took Damien's hands and led him to the library, lit a single candle. "I want this," he whispered. "Not because of the bond. Because of you." Damien's voice cracked. "Even after everything?" Julian smiled. "Especially after everything." Their second vow was not spoken. It was sealed in breathless silence, in the curve of mouths meeting again, in blood shared willingly, in hearts that refused to let go. And when the sun finally rose, Damien didn't turn to ash, because love, it turned out, was its own kind of immortality.